Today, we are taking, as we all know, a very important step forward to ensure working Californians can retire with dignity and maintain a decent standard of living in the later years of life. Retirement security is an issue of critical importance for California and the United States in particular, given the nation's aging population. Unfortunately, far too many Americans, saving programs like those offered through employers are simply not an option. This is an area where the United States lags dramatically behind our other industrialized counterparts. Today, over 7 million workers in California have zero. 7 million workers have zero access to any type of retirement savings plan at their place of employment. Nearly 50% of middle-income workers are at the risk of sliding into poverty when they can no longer work. If we fail to help these workers secure a supplement to Social Security, then they will need to rely on our state's already strained safety net programs, and that is the general fund, which we manage through the executive branch, the governor, as well as the leaders of the Assembly and Senate. Throughout my tenure in the legislature, I've actively sought solutions to this challenge, and it is an issue that is very personal for me. I was inspired by my family, specifically by my mother and by my tia, Francisca, which is my aunt. They worked all of their lives, never dependent on any government assistance. They cleaned houses. In fact, they spent the vast majority of life cleaning other people's houses. And in fact, they took care of the wealthy. And I would venture to say they took care of the wealthy, those who were hedge fund investors and who had solid retirement plans in La Jolla, Torrey Pines, and Coronado, and elsewhere. But they never had an option to save through their employers, and they never had the convenience of automatic payroll deductions. Unfortunately, my mother passed away at a very young age, so she never had an opportunity to enjoy retirement. But I would venture to say, had she still been with us today, she would have been working well into her 70s, no question about it. And having her son being today the president pro tem of the California State Senate, my mother, no doubt, would still be physically working today, perhaps cleaning someone else's home today or taking care of some very wealthy individual. My aunt, my tia Francisca, had to continue working well beyond the average age retirement, and her body simply gave out. With a lot of the 7 million workers who are actively working today, and those who are not working today at all, when they retire because their bodies, their arms, their shoulders, their waist, their hips, their legs physically give out. Then what puts them at risk for poverty is obviously a lack of a stream of revenue, whether it's based on work or whether it's a retirement security plan. So there is no, I got my program here, I'm opening up what I have on an annual basis. I know I can retire at the age of 65 or 68. I know what I can depend on an annual basis to pay for my rent, to pay for my food, to pay for the clothes on my back, to pay for my medications. And one of the most disturbing facts is that for senior citizens who live in poverty today, 3/4 of those individuals are in fact women. The vast majority of senior citizens who live in poverty today in the state of California, the wealthiest state and the wealthiest nation on planet Earth, are women and women of color. In California, there are millions of people in this very same predicament. So I want to underscore and emphasize that the story of my aunt, the story of my mother, is not a unique story. It's a story of millions of Californians today. The California Secure Choice Retirement Program is a first step to addressing this challenge. Now, I first introduced legislation on this issue back in 2008, close to 8 years ago, when I was still in the California State Assembly. And finally, in 2012, we succeeded in passing Senate Bill 1234, the California Secure Choice Retirement Savings Trust Act. I want to thank Governor Jerry Brown, for signing this measure. Over the past 5 years, I have made numerous trips to Washington, D.C. Our treasurer, Mr. Chung, and myself, we have gone on several trips together to Washington, D.C. to work with administration officials, including then former Secretary of Labor Hilda Solis and current Secretary of Labor Tom Perez, to find a path forward for California and other states that are looking to adopt very similar legislation. It's been a very long, and it has been a sometimes frustrating process of both trial and error. But thanks to the Obama administration, we now have a legal framework to allow wide-scale adoption of similar policies across the nation. As you all know, last summer, President Obama directed the Department of Labor, specifically Secretary of Labor Tom Perez, to issue a rule clarifying a path forward for implementation of California's Secure Choice Program and others like it. I can't tell you how many times we've gone to Washington, D.C., where folks said, this is impossible, it's not going to happen. It requires a statutory change through the Congress. And as we know, as dysfunctional as the Congress is today in Washington, D.C., we knew that this would never, ever come to pass. So we had to work very closely with administration officials. And sometimes we have very strong, very powerful bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. who want to protect their turf, irrespective of what the policy may do, because this is the way Washington, D.C. works, unfortunately, not for working Californians or working Americans throughout the entire nation. But California was able to prevail. And I do want to thank personally President Barack Obama and our Secretary of Labor, Tom Perez, for listening, for bringing their staff numerous meetings, countless meetings, highly technical meetings, bringing our lawyers, having them bring in their general counsel. We worked through this for years and years and years to receive the ruling that we needed so we could move forward in California. Now, as a result, Illinois and Oregon have adopted similar legislation, and at least 15 other states are considering plans to follow in our footsteps and create their own retirement programs. This is a huge, huge win for California and for low-wage workers, and also for other low-wage workers in dozens of states around the country who will soon have a safe and reliable way to save for the future. According to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, the GAO, nearly half of U.S. households ages 55 or older have no retirement savings and few resources outside of Social Security to draw on. Comparatively, we lag far behind countries such as Australia, the United Kingdom, that have their NEST program, as well as the Netherlands when it comes to retirement plan participation. Now, I did hear a couple of the points argued today, and I will emphasize without getting into any detail the issue of public outreach and education. Absolutely critical. Absolutely critical, because when we get to the point when we pull the trigger and we go live, a lot of folks, if we don't do this right, will open up their statements and they'll realize, hey, I got some money that's missing here. What's going on here? So outreach, 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 education, education, education. Where we get the resources, whether we raise it from the nonprofit foundation world to make sure that we educate as many millions of Californians that, hey, this is actually a good thing. This is not a bad thing. And I want to give you my own personal experience. I remember when I was in Washington, D.C. for the very first time. In Washington, D.C., I worked as a senior associate at the National Education Association. I was, I think, in my mid or late 20s at the time. And coming from a family, a single mother with a third-grade education, I just described what they did for a living. But it was those two women who were the ones who made Kevin De León who I am today. It was that single immigrant mother. I remember being in the HR office, and the HR director talked to me about the defined benefit plan. Fantastic, I love it. Then she says, we also have a DC plan, a defined contribution plan. What's that? Oh, it's a 401k plan. Oh, what's a 401k plan? It says, well, listen, here at the NEA, we actually have an incredible match with that plan. But with that match, we have to reduce a percentage from your check. And I said, well, how much? And I can't remember raw dollars what the percentage equated to. But I remember at that time that I was blown away that she was going to reduce my check. And I says, you're crazy. You're going to take money out of my check? Oh, no, 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 no. But it's a good thing because over a course of time, it compounds with the right investments. So therefore, when you hit this retirement age, this is how much your money you'll have because you will no longer work after a certain amount of time. And you need a stream of revenue to make sure you can handle your bills and you can retire with a sense of dignity. And it was a concept that was so alien to me. I had no idea what she was talking about still. And this is someone who was a college graduate, but coming from a family that had no roots, that had no DNA, with regards to retirement savings, with regards to investments, with regards to what happens in the future or the near future, because we're living for today to make ends meet. But I'm strongly confident that even with working class families, that if we're not condescending and paternalistic or maternalistic, if we empower and we have the ability through a brand new instrument to be innovative, that we can modify behaviors. And once they see a percentage that compounds over a course of a lifetime, what we're doing actually is an incredible policy because we are going to create a generation of savers. We're going to empower individuals to make their decision-making for their own future. And as it compounds, who knows what they do? Maybe they may purchase other financial products out there from the private sector. That's why I believe that we're building something that is huge for our workers in California. With policies like Secure Choice, we're creating a retirement savings program for a population that is highly fragmented and hard to reach, and one, quite frankly, that's been largely ignored by Wall Street. This is a common sense solution that will provide direct benefits not only for millions of Californians who will now enter retirement with a modicum of dignity and security, but also every California taxpayer and every recipient of public services whom we will be able to fund with the savings created by this program. We can lead the nation by example, and we can also start to close the gap with the international community. One last thing I want to mention, too, is this is not a black and white issue. It's very nuanced. And I personally, I have my principles that I've set forth with regards to this California Secure Choice Savings Act. So when it comes to option 1 and option 2, I'm very intrigued, no doubt about it, by the reserve fund. No question about it, I'm very intrigued. But what I would underscore and emphasize is we cannot let the perfect get in the way of the good. The beauty about this board and the beauty of all of you today is we have the ability to create a product, work on that product. We build a platform that we establish as we move forward. And we have many opportunities as a board working in collaboration through the legislative process and the executive branch as well to come up with something that what we come up with today may be the same product that we'll have in 2, 3, or 4 years. But this is the beauty of this board and the beauty of all of you bringing your wisdom, your experience from the defined benefit community, from the defined contribution community, from the investment community, and elsewhere. This is the beauty of what we have before us as an opportunity. Lastly, I want to say I'm extremely grateful. Mr. Chair, Madam Controller, Mr. Sokol, Ms. Walker, Secretary Morgenstern, Ms. Ortega, Pollard, Hooper, as well as De La Rosa, and our new Executive Director. I'm extremely grateful to you as well as to the staff in your efforts to identify prudent and sustainable program recommendations to ensure that we can meet all of our obligations to the retirees. Now it's time for the legislature. It's time for the legislature to take the torch and to put your insight into statute so that millions of California workers can begin saving for retirement. I am looking forward to engaging with stakeholders across the board. I want to give a very special thank you to the working families of labor and to the leaders of labor, too. You have brought incredible insight, and you have educated me as well as we move forward. To my colleagues in the legislature on both sides of the aisle, as we know, retirement security is a nonpartisan issue. Republicans and Democrats, those who are agnostic, those who are declined to state, they all retire into poverty unless they have a game plan before them. we make this much easier because we're innovative, the first of its kind in the nation. So I'm looking forward to working with my colleagues across the aisle on both sides, in the Assembly as well as the Senate. Again, to Mr. Chair as well as to the members, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.